So just before we start with the episode of FilmWorx Fantastic, and the guys are currently setting up for one of our new shoots, we decided that this awesome interview with DeVille van Niekerk was so beautiful and amazing and so insightful for us as well as you. We decided to take this in 2 parts. So we'd like to invite you to part 1 of our interview and podcast of FilmWorx Fantastic with DeVille van Niekerk about stunts. So welcome back to FilmWorx Fantastic, and today I have a very special guest. Now if you think about the film industry, it's incredibly wide. You get anything from directors, producers, carpenters. But this specific field really is the one that makes your heart beat faster. The stunt performers. And I've got DeVille van Niekerk here. And I just can't wait to hear more about this specific segment and his experience. Anything from Hollywood to Bollywood. DeVille, welcome.
Hi, Jacobus. Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here in the studio with you guys.
DeVille, I'm super curious. As a boy, normally, you know, your parents grow you up to aspire to be engineer, accountant, and sometimes the jobs that our kids will do doesn't even exist yet. But here you are doing this incredible stunt performance industry. I'd love to hear how you got from school, maybe even studying, or how do you land in this role?
It's definitely an unconventional journey, to say the least, but one I wouldn't trade in for anything. And a lot of it is thanks to my dad and my upbringing, actually. My folks always encouraged us to try out a whole wide range of sports and hobbies and activities, creative stuff to physical stuff. And my dad came from a military background, and he boxed. And so he would hang up his old Army Browns bag in the garage with a bunch of old rags in and teach me how to box. Wow. And he was also an ex-gymnast. So was my aunt. She was a Springbok gymnast. What? So there was a lot of jumping and flipping going on in the family. Yeah. And I didn't really take to rugby and cricket and other traditional sports. Yeah. I could enjoy it enough, but it didn't really excite me. Somehow climbing on things and jumping off things did excite me, though. Riding motorcycles. Also from my dad, he's had motorcycles since I can remember. So I got one when I was 16. And just, I guess, a whole lifestyle of outdoor adventures and climbing trees and always being on the roof, always wanting to be somewhere up high for some reason. I just feel at ease and at peace when I'm on top of a rooftop somewhere. Wow. But my dad, he taught me how to do a backflip in the backyard, where I guess kind of other kids would play catch. Yeah. My dad was like, let me show you how to run up this wall and do a backflip.
And he physically did that?
He taught me. At that stage, he could still do some gymnastic stuff, but he wasn't running up the walls and flipping off them. Yeah. Not quite anymore. But he did carry over that skill to me as a kid. And I think between the gymnastics element and boxing, capoeira, martial arts, the self-defense kind of stuff, along with 80s action movies. So I grew up in the golden age of action cinema, watching guys like Van Damme and Jackie Chan doing these amazing things with their bodies. And it was just something that really resonated with me. So I grew up with all of these influences and just playing all the time. And at some point it became more than just a hobby. Became something that I really was passionate about. When I was a teenager, I became really passionate about showcasing action cinema locally. It's something that I'd wanted to do for a long time, and I got a whole bunch of friends together and some film school students, and I just choreographed some fight stuff, and we did some like guerrilla shoots, parkour, climbing up the side of a hotel in Hatfield Square and just shooting from across the road. And we made this awesome action short film, and I think that was the moment I really realized I don't want to be a doctor or a lawyer or a whatever other traditional 9 to 5. It just wasn't a fit for me.
Wow.
I needed to tell stories in this kind of way. I'd always been interested in acting as a kid. I was involved in neighborhood drama groups. I went to the Performing Arts Lifestyle Institute, Shireen Swart's training college in Pretoria, and at a young age got involved in presenting and commercials and things like that. So I was comfortable in front of the camera, and I just got to a point where I said, this is really what I want to do. And
that's amazing. But so run me by from the fun factor to the commercial factor. So there's always this one thing where it could be a passion and it's fun and it's, in your off time, but how did you move it into a career?
I would say the opportunity presented itself, I think 2009 was the first commercial that I did where I performed stunts. I did some parkour stunts off of on a rooftop in Johannesburg, and I just realized, hang on, these skills that are not a job or a chore, that are just things that I love and that I'm passionate about, are able to pay my bills. And that connection for me was like, okay, I can actually make a career out of this.
Sure.
And then I started to pursue it a bit more seriously by actually creating a brand and trying to kind of market and advertise the fact that I'm not just a regular actor, but that I have this action skill set. At that stage, I still didn't know much about stunts and the stunt industry. I didn't really know that it existed in Cape Town in the way that I do now. I knew that there are guys who do stunts for movies, but I had no idea beyond that. So it was only actually when I was in the US, when I moved to Los Angeles, that I got properly introduced and inducted into stunts.
When we look at a movie and we see these stunts, and it looks so seamless, walking away from explosions, people on fire even. What do you experience are the common misperceptions of this industry?
I would definitely say that the biggest misconception is that it's cowboy stunts, like Wild West, gung-ho, just fly by the seat of your pants kind of thing. Couldn't be further from the truth. Stunts is actually about risk mitigation, risk assessment and risk mitigation. And it's actually a pretty technical process that requires a very sharp mind and very focused and disciplined individuals, because you're taking a inherently dangerous scenario and you're approaching it with the aim to minimize the amount of risk or completely mitigate it altogether, to make something that seems extremely dangerous as safe as it possibly can be. Look, it's the nature of stunts that it's a dangerous activity. But when you assess a situation and you put as much in place as possible to make it as safe as possible, then it becomes something a lot more manageable. And then you put a performer in there who has the right mindset and the right training to know what to do when things go wrong, not necessarily when everything's going right.
Wow.
That's part of the really important stuff that a stunt performer needs to be made of. Can you keep your cool, and can you stay focused and committed to the task at hand when everything around you is going wrong or is chaos? It's easy to walk across the street when there are no cars coming, but if there are a bunch of cars zooming back and forth, people shooting at you, explosions going off, smoke everywhere, sirens, now you've got a lot of obstacles to deal with. And if you are not prepared and aware and conditioned for that environment, a very simple thing can become very dangerous.
Wow. So you're talking about preparation and conditioning. So I suppose that automatically puts you in a position where you put your body on the line quite a lot. We've off camera, we've spoken about him being away for a few months back-to-back shooting. How do you prepare your body and your mind to stay fit and on course to step on set again for the next production?
That is a challenging thing, Jacobus, and I don't know if there's anyone out there who's fully cracked the code on how to do that, because it's inevitable that there will be a degradation that begins to set in when you are completely removed from the routine under which you can flourish. Because the nature of an extended shoot, especially an away shoot, is that it's going to be all-consuming. 6 days a week, often 15, 16-hour days on set. And you just don't have time for your normal routine. You don't really have time to squeeze in regular training at the gym or eat all your meals at exactly the time that you're supposed to eat them. A lot of things that are quite difficult to manage in those scenarios.
Sure.
Sleep is another one. And for me personally, the 3 pillars that are absolutely essential for a performer is your sleep, your nutrition, and your training.
Right.
Your skills don't maintain themselves. Then you need to spend time honing your skills. Just like a pro athlete or pro boxer, anybody whose main focus is their sport or their profession, and they're going to put a lot of time into it. But now all of a sudden, for months at a time, you're in an environment where you cannot give that same level of input. So how do you maintain highest level output? That's the trick. To a large degree, I would say your own personal discipline will dictate how much you're able to do, along with your conditioning before stepping into that job. So for me personally, I will do as much as I possibly can ahead of a job to prepare, knowing that when I step onto set, I have to be in the best possible physical and mental state. So I know I needed to give myself, prior to the job, enough rest, but also enough training, so that I can over time manage myself. And then wherever possible, work in little bits of training here and there. I'm quite hectic when it comes to sleep. For me, everything starts and ends at sleep.
Wow.
And the science is there to back it up, that if you start losing out on sleep, if you start getting less, if you're an athlete, less than 7 or 8 hours, the degradation that starts to happen is very noticeable and affects your performance, from mental to physical, to your moods, your hormones, your immune system. Everything begins to go downhill if you don't sleep well. So that's a difficult thing to manage in the film industry, because we work crazy hours. But when I do sleep, I do try to make sure that all the distractions are off and that the conditions are adequate to get good rest. And then there's also an aspect of managing your mental state. And again, I think it's some mental gymnastics, some discipline to keep your mind positive, to see the challenges as an opportunity to grow, or for me, I like to see seemingly insurmountable obstacles as an opportunity to really test myself and see what I'm capable of, how much I can endure, how far I can push, how deep I can reach. That's a good mental place for me to be, rather than to just become overwhelmed by the nature of the stunt that you're going to do. And especially when it comes to performing the stunts, you have to be in a headspace where you are fully focused, where you are committed to handling what's in front of you, regardless of whether you just had a bad bit of news, a family member died, or your girlfriend broke up with you, or whatever. The stunt doesn't care. You still have to do your job, and you need to maintain the right mental headspace, as well as the right physical skill sets to be able to do your action to the best of your ability and to the highest caliber possible. So it's a tricky thing to navigate, and it's a tricky thing to balance. But it is possible to lessen the effects of not having a good routine by eating well, making sure that instead of watching a movie marathon or whatever, you get enough sleep. Yeah. Other than that, it's just to know yourself and know your mental capabilities and be able to flick that switch and go, okay, now it's on. Now I'm focused, and I'm going to stay committed to this action in front of me.
Thank you so much for joining us on part 1 of our podcast, FilmWorx Fantastic with DeVille van Niekerk. Stay tuned for part 2, which will release soon.